Are there too many people in the world? I've been thinking about this. It does seem 8 billion of us that there could be too many people. And if there's any more people, we'll run out of resources. And then what will we do? We'll perhaps starve to death, freeze to death, or fight each other for whatever scraps there are left. Either way, it does paint a very grim picture. And I know that there are some people who like to think this is the case, and we've potentially seen some mechanism, shall we say, to sort of try and encourage people not to have children. Look at China, they tried it out. And some believe that there's been a nefarious way of depopulating the world and the planet. And maybe there is, I don't know. But I've been thinking about this a little bit more, and I thought, I'm not convinced that actually there are too many people. In fact, I think the more people you have, the better it's been. But the argument goes like this. If you have a field of cows, say, and cows eat grass, don't they? And let's say this field is quite a large field and it's surrounded by a fence or a hedge. So the cows are in the field, they can't get out, there's nowhere else to go. This is their world, if you like. And the grass is growing merrily. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, that the grass is very well fertilised, probably by the cows themselves, and it will just grow. And if you have the right number of cows, if you've only got a couple of cows, the grass is plentiful. But there will come a point where if the cows keep breeding with one another, that they'll have babies, of course, and those babies will be hungry and they'll eat more of the grass. But eventually there'll be a number where it's just sustainable. But then if the cows have more babies, more calves, and those calves start eating, you start seeing that the grass cannot grow quickly enough for the cows to be sustained. And at some point, the cows, some of the cows, the weakest of the cows, will not be able to eat anymore, and eventually all the cows will, well, they'll die out, or there'll only be a small minimum number of cows again, and most of the population would have died out because the grass is not able to grow quick enough and the cows eat too fast. And some people think that humans are like that as well, that we'll use up all the resources, we'll use up all the food, all the minerals, all the various things that we need to sustain life. And it does sound as if that makes sense, but I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced because let's look at it a different way. All the way through history, we've seen that actually the more people we have, the better off we've been. Originally, we were hunter-gatherers, weren't we? We would go around hunting. Now, if there's only a few of you, it might be difficult to hunt certain animals. You may need a larger number of people to hunt some of those more nutritious animals, the ones that taste nicer and make big juicy steaks. And once you've killed whatever the animal is, it will be dished out and, you know, the carcass isn't going to go to waste. If there's only one or two of you, there's a lot of that animal and the rest of it goes to waste very quickly because you don't have fridges. And so you'd have to go out and kill another. If there's more of you, you can use that carcass, and perhaps less of you have to go running out and kill the animals and so on and so forth. But there are times, of course, when the animals have run out, or you've depleted the herd of animals that you were relying on, or that the berries and the nuts are just not in season, and it's not a very good way to carry on. So man is clever though, because unlike a cow that just thinks, where's the grass, man is using its brain. It can see the problem and it can work out a solution. So man realized that actually if you started to farm, if you planted the seeds of these grasses and these berries and these nuts, if you planted the seeds, you could have a more abundant supply, more under your own control. And the same with animals. They could grow the animals or farm the animals themselves, cull what they needed, keep the other animals alive. Those animals would have offspring and you would have an abundant supply. You didn't have to go running around the countryside in search of an animal that is, you know, potentially diseased or not very fat or anything. You could fatten the animals on your own land. Man has been very clever in that way because they use their brain. They can problem solve. They can innovate. That also meant that all the people around didn't have to go farming or hunting. They could do other tasks. So some people would go, I know, I'll buy that food from you with a service. So I notice you've got horses. Have you thought about having metal shoes on them? That might help them on some of the stonier ground. I'm quite good with a bit of metal work, been practicing in my spare time. And so somebody could be a blacksmith, which helps the productivity of the horses. Somebody else would be good with their hands with perhaps woodwork and say, do you know what, at the end of the day, you probably want to have a sit down, don't you? I'll make you a chair. And soon, as you can see, man has innovated and used the problem solving of situations and made life so much better, so that the whole tribe doesn't have to go running around exhausted anymore. People are farming, people are then making clothes, they're spending time on other things, they have a bit of leisure time, and so on and so forth. And you come up to the modern day, where you can see that we've innovated beyond our wildest possible dreams, which has been fantastic. Of course, the population has been increasing, and then you get to this worry, oh, we're now in that finite place. However, is that really true? Because what we've found is that when people are able to innovate and change things, we've now found that we've increased the number of food with a lot less work. We've got machines to help us, which has been really handy. We can produce all sorts of goods and services because there are more people. And as more people come along, there are those people who are geniuses, those people who are really clever beyond everybody else because they've been concentrating or allowed to concentrate on thinking things and coming up with brainwaves which have created a whole new generation of easy things that help us get along. But you still then have these people who say, well, yeah, but, you know, the globe is only so big and eventually there's going to be a problem. So, as I mentioned before, some people have tried to solve that problem, like in China, by saying you can only have one child, and we can see what a mess that made. But in the West, if you notice, as people have got richer, their lives are a little bit easier than before. And there will be those people, of course, who are saying, but what do you mean? Life is tough, life is hard, we've got all these bills to pay, and with all this, you know, how can I afford my subscription to Sky TV? Well, that's a luxury, remember. If you go back 100 years or 150 years, most people weren't living in comfortable houses. Most people were unable to sit on a sofa. Most people didn't have armchairs. Most people didn't have central heating. Most people lived in a lot worse conditions. We've pulled ourselves out of so many bad situations by having lots and lots of people coming up with lots and lots of ideas, trade and so on. But I know you're still thinking, yeah, but hang on, we're still going to come to that point where there are far too many people in the world. But look at the West, where we're actually not having enough babies. We're not having enough children to replace the population. Look at Japan. They're in a situation where they're desperately not having enough. They're getting older and there's not a replacement population for them. So it would appear that actually, instead of thinking that the cows will just keep growing and they'll just eat all the grass, that actually there will be a point where it levels out. Of course, in the third world, people are still having more children than in the West because, well, they still need to guarantee that the children will live and their conditions need to be helped. The richer they are, the more stable they are, the more luxurious lifestyle they have, the less need it is to continue to keep populating. So it does seem that it will sort itself out. Now, a lot of this inspiration that I've come up with, you might think, Richard, you're a genius, you've thought it all out, you've worked it all out. Well, not really. I have been thinking about this, and there's a book called Superabundance, which goes on to try and explain why actually the more people you have in the world, the better off we are. And although I haven't finished the book, I've only had it the other day, it's absolutely inspiring. But the one interesting thing is a warning that you can see from the book and from thinking this way, why it's so important that we have our freedoms. So I just want to read you this last little bit, if I may, on the fly cover. It says here, that although, it's essential to have more people, we get better, we're more abundant with our stuff, and we won't run out of all the resources on this planet. He says here, but large populations are not enough to sustain superabundance. Just think of the poverty in China and India before their respective economic reforms. To innovate, people must be allowed to think, to speak, to publish, associate, and disagree. They must be allowed to save, invest, trade, and profit. In a word, they must be free. And that is the crucial thing. We as free people should be allowed to go about our business, not be restricted by those people who think they're in government and want to rule the world, not by that, not by restricting us to 15-minute cities, not by scaring us that the world is warming up and there's nothing that we can do about it, not by taking us down into a net zero where clearly the economics of that will not work. Not by giving us digital IDs and making sure they monitor and gauge everything on carbon footprints, and not by giving us a central bank in which a digital currency can then protect you, or rather prevent you from buying the things that you want to do or restrict our movements. All of that is anti-freedom and not in any way beneficial to the planet. We need to be free. We need to reject those ideas. We need to push them away, because if we are going to be sustainable on this planet, we need to be a free, innovative nation. And that's the only way forward, it seems to me. You may disagree, and I'll be interested in your comments. Thank you.